Okay, so here we are at the advanced solution. And as I said previously, we really want to get that over scroll, which you can only really get when you use a scroll container. So we're going to have to go back and try and use a scroll container. We're just going to have to work around its limitations. And that's one thing we want to do. The second thing we want to do is, what I want to do is I want to create these snap points. Okay, so again, I think it's really cool to be able to have this minimize, maximize snap points. You'll see it in Google Maps. You'll see it in lots of apps that use this pattern. So that's what we're going to do. And at the center of this solution, like I came up with the idea of this solution based on some things that I've done in After Effects and I guess animation in general. So in After Effects, sometimes you use this thing called a null object. And a null object is really just an object that's an invisible object. And you're just really using it as a reference point. You're using it to connect something to it to make it behave in a certain way. And we're going to sort of use that concept here, have an invisible object, which is going to be controlling the scroll, which is not actually going to be the scroll that you see. Okay, so I promise it will make perfect sense as we go through it. So we are going to have to trash all of the triggers and responses that we've done already in solution one, because it is kind of a slightly different approach. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to create this null object, okay? So to do that, I need some content, some fake content, and I'm going to use just a regular rectangle for my fake content. And this is going to start at the top of the viewable area, so just below the header bar. And it needs to go all the way down. Oops. It needs to extend all the way down to where our content finishes. So we just need to find our transactions. We're just going to unclip sublayers here to find the bottom of our content. And we just need to make this the same size. Okay. So there you go. And we're just going to make it the same width as well. And so this should be sort of around 1,115 deep. Okay, so this is our content. Remember that when you create a scroll container, it only scrolls based on the content that's inside of it. So we need something inside of the scroll container. Okay, so I'm going to call this null object or null obj. Okay, I'm just going to reduce the opacity down to the fill opacity down to 50%. Just so we can see underneath it, just so you can kind of see the mechanics of how it's all working. Okay, so we're going to wrap this null object in a container. And this is going to be our scroll container. So we're going to call this null container. And we want to make this scrollable. And obviously to make it scrollable again, we need to change the bounding box. So we're going to bring the bounding box back up to our scroll area. So that's just above the tab bar. Now, ultimately, with this null object, we've got it at 50% here, but we will ultimately turn it down to 0, so you can't see it, okay? In fact, let's just leave it at 0. We can always bring it back up to a percentage so you can see kind of how the mechanics is working. Okay, so I'm going to lock this null container layer just in case I don't want to accidentally move it. And also when you lock a layer in ProtoPie, it enables you to tap the layers underneath. So I don't know if you knew that, but a little tip there for you. Okay, so we're going to delete all the triggers and responses. So these are the original ones. We don't need any of these. So we're going to have to re-engineer all of this. And the other thing we need to tweak, and again, this is another one of those things to kind of make our life a little bit easier. We want to take the transactions group, which is currently, it's basically the container is sitting at the top of the card. And we've got this rows container, which is kind of slightly offset by 32, because this rows container is nested inside transactions. So as all objects are positionally relative to each other in ProtoPie, it's offset by 32. We want this to be exactly the same. Okay, just to make our life easier, because the rows is the content, the same as the null object. Okay, so because the null object is at y0 inside its container, I want the rows to be at y0 inside of its container. So we're going to change this to 0, and then I still want it to be offset, so I'm just going to move the transactions down by 32. So let's go and say plus 32. And now we're basically in the right position. So rows and transactions is exactly the same. Okay. Okay, so that's looking good. Okay, so first trigger we want to add is a chain trigger again. So again, you're going to use the chain trigger. We're going to be chaining some different things this time. And we're going to target the null container. Okay, that's the container, not the object. We want the scroll container. And the property we're looking to chain to this time is the scroll property. Okay, so we're going to choose scroll instead of y. Okay, got the scroll property. And then inside the container, inside the trigger, we're going to add the move response. And this is going to target the rows. So rows, not row, the rows container, which we created, this one over here. And now we've got our little matrix to fill out. Okay, so we're going to set the range to -50. And we're going to scroll that to 500. Okay, and then for the rows, we're going to set that to 50, which is going to go to -500. So maybe you're wondering why the minuses are transposed. If you remember, or if you don't know, the scroll 0 point is the reverse of the y 0 point. So whereas a y position is 0 at the top of the screen, going down to a positive number at the bottom of the screen, scroll is the other way around. Okay, so we're effectively using the scroll values to move the rows. So we're chaining that together. So that's why they're reversed. Hope that makes sense. Okay, we're going to add another move response. And this one's going to be moving the sheet. Okay, so we're going to target the sheet container. And we've got the same matrix. So we need to, again, work out our values. So we're going to set the range to -50. And actually, we probably need to work out the movement of the sheet first. So let's check out the sheet position. So you see the sheet position is 403. And I haven't really explained what this -50 is all about. Probably should have done that. So to get the overscroll matching, because remember we're chaining these two things together. So the thing we're chaining doesn't have overscroll. So a scroll container starts at 0, and it's when you pull it down to get that overscroll, you're kind of going into the minus. So I worked out that 50 pixels is probably enough for people that are going to pull that overscroll, because we still need to map those two values together. So whilst the 0 position of the scroll would map, say, our sheet position, which is 403, we need to account for the overscroll, this extra 50 pixels. Okay, so to do that, we need to add 50 pixels to the sheet position. So this is actually going to become 453. So I'm going to type 453 in here. So that's the starting position. Then we want the sheet to move up to the same position, which I think was 137. Yeah. So we're going to type in 137. So this is our starting and end position. So now we've got 137, we can now work out the difference between the two. So we'll get our calculator. And we'll put in 453 minus 137. That'll give us our distance of travel, which is 316. Okay, so we need to take that 316 and we need to put it in here. In fact, no, we need to take 50 off of this as well, don't we? Because we need it to be the same. So go back into our calculator. See, I told you it was confusing. 316 plus 50 gives us 366. This is one of those things where you'll probably find yourself doing it and then testing it and then maybe tweaking it. I certainly had to go back and forth on this one. Okay, that should be correct. Let's just preview that and see where we are. So we've got what looks like the right starting position, because when you set chain, it actually has already moved to the first two values, regardless of what your layers are set in your view. Okay, so that's good. So let's have a look. And what you're basically looking for is, you can see here that we've got some parallaxing going on. So it looks like I might have gone the wrong way. So 316 minus 50, 266. Let's try that. All right, now it's correct. Okay, there you go. Okay, so you can see we've got our overscroll, and you can see that we've got our mapping. So we just need to, we've got the bleed going on again. So we just need to sort that out on our transactions. So we just need to turn the card clipping back on. There you go. Okay, so that's the first part of our transactions scrolling, but now we've got that overscroll, which makes it feel much more realistic. So that's cool. But it's just looking at this, it feels a bit kind of almost lazy. It's just like, oh, it's scrolling and it's just kind of like just falling like in the middle, and it doesn't feel right. So that's why I want to put these snap points in. Okay, so that's what we're going to do now. So let's close down preview. So we're going to add two snap points. We're going to add a snap point for the expanded view and a snap point for the minimized view. And the main problem we've got to solve from a prototyping perspective is how to know which way we're scrolling. So we're going to need to use some variables, and we're going to need to use some predefined variables for this. And there's a couple of ways that we could do this. So there's the way where we could use two variables, and we could save the current position in one variable and then write the new position to another variable and then compare the two so we know which direction we're going. But there's a far easier way of doing this, and that's to use a predefined variable called velocity. And actually, there's three predefined variables for velocity. There's one called velocity, there's velocity x and velocity y. And with velocity x and y, which you're going to see, they actually give you a positive number or a negative number depending on which direction you're going. And we're going to use that to know which direction of which way is the direction of travel. So let's get down to it. Okay, so I'm going to create a number variable, and we're going to call it scroll velocity. So let me just create one just for this scene. We're going to call that scroll velocity, scroll vel. Okay, and we're going to come over and add a detect trigger. And we're going to target null container. And specifically, we want null container's scroll property again. Okay, and within this detect trigger, we're going to add an assign response. And we're going to target that scroll vel variable we just created. Okay, and inside of here, we're going to add a formula, and this is where we add the predefined variable. So we're going to add a predefined variable, which they all start with the dollar symbol. And we're going to type velocity, and we want velocity y. Touch velocity y is the one we want. Okay, and that's all we need to do inside of the formula. We're just going to click OK. Okay, I'm going to add a touch up trigger. And again, I'm going to target the null container. And then within this touch up trigger, I'm going to add a condition. And I want to choose that Scrollable variable. And I want to basically set up a condition to see when it's less than 0. So when Scrollable is less than 0, because if it's less than 0, it must be a negative number, right? Okay. So if it is, we're going to scroll to a particular point. And again, we're using our null object. Remember, our null object is controlling everything. So we're going to use the scroll response. And we basically want to figure out the distance of travel for the sheet. So from where it is now in its original position up to the top. Okay, so let's have a look at the sheet. So its starting position is 403. And we know that the top of the card is 137. So we just need to subtract those two from each other. So 403 minus 137 gives us 266. Okay, so that's the value we want. Just type that in there. Okay, let's give that a test. Okay, so if we let go, we can see it snapped to the up position. Obviously, we haven't done the bottom one yet. But there's kind of a problem here because we'll see, as you can see, I can't actually scroll up to the top, to the bottom of my transactions anymore. So I've got a slight problem here. And this is because every time we swipe up, the condition is firing, causing our list to constantly scroll to 266. So we need to have a way of telling it that the view's expanded. Okay, so we need another condition, like a sub condition. Okay, so let's figure out how to solve that problem. So I'm going to add another variable. I'm going to call it scroll pos for scroll position. That's going to be a number variable as well. And within this detect trigger, I'm going to add another assign response. I'm going to target that scroll pos variable. And inside it, I'm going to add a formula. So I'm going to find my null container object. And I'm going to type a dot and I'm going to look for scroll offset. So basically this formula is going to give me the scroll position of the null container. Okay. I'm going to click OK. So I'm basically assigning the scroll position to this variable. Okay. Okay, so let's go back to the condition. And I'm going to add a subcondition. And we're going to choose that scroll pos variable. And we're going to look for when it's less, if it's less than 266. So 266 obviously is the value. Okay, so if it's less than 266, then it's not expanded. Okay, so that's kind of the idea. Okay, let's preview that, see if that works. So we go into our expanded view, and you can see now we can scroll. So that's basically fixed that issue. Cool. Okay, so that takes care of the first snap point. Now let's do the reverse. So I'm going to duplicate my condition and I'm going to come into the first subcondition and I'm just going to switch the equality operator to greater than. So we're looking for when scroll velocity is greater than 0. And then we're going to come down to the second subcondition. And again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to switch the equality operator to look for when it's greater than. And we want to look for when it's greater than 0. And then finally, we need to come into the scroll response. And we want to move it to obviously our minimal position, which is going to be 0. Okay, let's give that a preview and test. So we're going to scroll to our snap up position. And then we're going to scroll down to our snap down. Snap up, snap down. Okay, so that's the end of this tutorial. Hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, then please give it a like. And if you want to be notified when I create more video tutorials, then make sure you subscribe to the channel. Subscribing to the channel really helps me out. It helps me get the word out, helps people find the ProtoPie tutorials when they're searching for them on YouTube. So I really appreciate it if you would do that for me. Okay, so that's me signing off. I will see you next time.